Now we go to the rest of the guys in the room. And so who is the next guy that can emerge? I think the guy that everybody's looking at and they're trying to really figure out is Gregory Smith, who transferred from Florida. Gregory Smith the third. He's a hybrid safety / linebacker. And this one, it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, to figure out where exactly he's going to stick. Because when the initial position rooms came out, he was a guy that was listed with the linebackers. Now you look at him, he's a guy that's listed with the defensive backs. And so you've got to figure out, okay, where exactly is he going to fit for Carolina? You look back at his time at Florida, and he was a guy that played, relatively sparingly this past year, played in 5 games for the Gators, and didn't really do a whole lot for them, but was a safety. He in 5 games logged 100 snaps, registered 5 total tackles, and had 1 pass defense. Prior to that, in his final season at the high school level, he had 29 total tackles, 4 pass breakups, an interception, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. So this is a guy that can play really anywhere. I think because of the lack of depth that they have at linebacker and the lack of proven guys that they have there, his best avenue to playing will probably be at the linebacker spot. But there is one thing about him. He is 6'3". Some people have him listed at 6'4", and he's 211 pounds. So this is an incredibly thin player. Figuring out if he's going to be able to hold up, if he's going to be able to get off of blocks and make plays in the run game, I think is what is going to be the difference in figuring out whether or not he's going to play linebacker or play safety.
Yeah, I think this could be someone we're talking about this year as a linebacker, stays with the program, maybe next year transitions back to safety if they have more depth in that position group. Nonetheless, he's got to get bigger if he's going to play linebacker full time at the college level. 211 pounds is it's small, especially with some of the programs that Carolina will face. That's a guy that could get worn down. So I think you like the versatility, you like what he can do, what he can be. But if this is why we talk about this position group needing to stay healthy, because if the initial wave of guys don't hold up, if there's injuries there, and this is someone that I think you have to count on more than what we're talking about right now, that does not spell good things for Carolina's defense in 2025, no matter how much of a defensive wizard Bill Belichick and his son may be. So I like them targeting guys that have played the safety position that they want to move to linebacker. I don't think it's an accident that they've brought in multiple guys that can do that. With that being said, if they're going to play linebacker, they've got to get their bodies to a point to hold up. If they're going to be difference makers in the run game, and that's going to be something that I think if he stays within the program going into next year, that'll be something that he takes a big step forward, is getting that body ready to hold up, playing up front, 12 games, so he can be a guy that, when he's if he's on field and rundowns, isn't getting picked on and getting bullied.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for him was that he was a guy that was a part of the spring portal group. If he was a guy that was part of the fall group, he probably ends up playing a little bit more for Carolina at whatever position they're ultimately going to play him at. I think he's probably going to end up at safety, but if he does end up at linebacker, I think he's a guy that, coming from Florida, has enough talent to be able to do something for Carolina, which I think is what they're looking for from the rest of the guys in that room. The other guy that I think has a chance this year to probably factor in is Evan Bennett, who is a holdover from last year's squad. I think with him, it's just the fact that he has been with the team this entire summer, or even going back into the spring. And I think, the other thing with him is that, now that he's, been in college for a year, he was with Carolina last year. I think he's probably got his body a little bit more positioned to be able to contribute this year. I like him as a guy that can help in the run game. I think he certainly has that ability. That was one of the things that I liked about him coming out of high school. But the thing is, for him, he's going to have to probably get a little bit better in coverage. There are some other things that he's going to have to shore up, but this is probably the guy, even maybe over Gregory Smith. This is probably the guy that I think has the best chance to add himself to that linebacker rotation. But I don't know if coming out of the gate to start the season, he's going to be one of those guys.
Yeah, I would probably say not, but maybe the more he plays, gets comfortable in the system, can prove that he can hold up in pass coverage, I do think there could be a larger role for him, because I do think that it's going to be intentional that they're rotating guys in and out. And maybe because when we've talked about this position group, and we talk about how this guy is good in one area but deficient in the other, and then the next guy is kind of flip-flop, there could be some mix matching that Carolina does with their linebackers to try to maximize their strengths but really minimize and hide the weaknesses. And so if this is a guy that can hold up better in the run game than, let's say Kamori House, maybe, in obvious rundown situations, Carolina subs him in, and then he is on the field and makes a play or two in the run game. When it's a passing, if it's an obvious passing down, obviously you're not going to see this guy on the field. So I think you like the fact that he's been with the program. I think kind of knows the culture, knows his way around Chapel Hill. I think made an obvious retention for Bill Belichick, for just to keep someone there for some familiarity in that linebacker room that got overhauled, as you mentioned, with 4 transfers. And I do think there is a scenario where when we get maybe post Clemson and we're going down the back half of the season, that maybe he has a much bigger role than we anticipated. And I think that'll be a good thing, because Carolina's going to need more than just Simpson and House to produce at this linebacker spot. Mm-hmm. They're going to need, I would say, consistent production from at least 3 to 4 guys to really maximize that room this year.
Well, the other thing about this linebacking core is when you look at the last few years, with as much as they played these guys, Carolina had really, really good injury luck. If for some reason something is to happen to that linebacking core this year, and you lose one guy, all of a sudden you're looking at a pretty bleak situation for Carolina, especially depending on who that guy is. And so you just need somebody else to step up. Maybe it is Evan Bennett that is the guy that ends up stepping up. I think for him, he was a guy that played at a pretty low level of high school football in the state of Georgia. That year, getting acclimated to the college game, I think that might pay off for him. And he's a guy that provides a little bit of versatility. So I think he could be a guy that could factor in at either spot for Carolina if he can get himself up to speed with this new system, if he can prove to the staff. I mean, it's at 6'2", 230 pounds. I think he's where he needs to be weight-wise. I think his body's built where it needs to be. It's just about proving that he is talented enough to be able to get the job done and for them to put him on the field. Now, other guys that could factor in here are 2 guys that transferred in during the summer. That is Oklahoma State transfer Jonathan Agamadu and Florida State transfer Tamir Hickman-Collins. Now, the thing is, I have noticed one guy that has been on a lot of the videos that they have put up and a lot of the photographs that they have put up of the team is Hickman-Collins. Now, I don't know if that means that he is a guy that's seeing some decent reps. He could be a guy that is playing a little bit for Carolina. The thing for him is that for Florida State, he was kind of a reach. It was an odd fit for him coming out of the state of South Carolina. He was a guy that, I'm shocked Carolina didn't give more consideration to, considering that he was out of Indian Land High School, which is right outside of the Charlotte area. But this is a guy that we had not heard anything about. He goes to Florida State, which as a low-end 3-star was pretty interesting. And now, he gets his opportunity at Carolina. Maybe this is a guy that can break through. Agamadu, the interesting thing about him is he's a guy that was an edge rusher coming out of high school. Now he's making the transition to linebacker. He was there at Oklahoma State playing linebacker back in the spring. And we'll see if that transition continues to work here. So 2 more interesting names to keep an eye on, along with the true freshmen in this room. All 3 of these guys joined the team in the summer. That would be Tyler Hauser, Jake Bauer, and Lance Pascal. Me being a guy that is a huge fan of Tyler Hauser, I think he's the one guy, if you're looking for someone out of that freshman group to really step up, I think that's your guy right there. I thought, when I watched him, high motor guy, big hits, does a good job of reading the offense and reacting, rarely guesses. So certainly a guy that just read and reacts, does everything that you need to do. A little young, but I do think that he is a guy that played at Pope John the 12th, which is a school in New Jersey, one of the better schools in the state of New Jersey. And this past year, had 144 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 1 interception, and helped lead his team to a state title. So he is, I think, the best chance that Carolina has of getting someone that's a true freshman in there. And with some of the unknowns, I don't think it's the craziest thing to think we could see him out here at some point during the season playing a little bit for Carolina, especially as the year wears on and he gets to, the chance to prove himself a little bit more.
Yeah, and maybe he's a player that you identify that if Carolina takes care of business the way they should against, Charlotte, Richmond, you get him on the field, get him some experience, get him acclimated to the college game, can really maybe carve out a role as the season moves along. The 2 transfers, you got to like the fact that they're coming from the power conference level. So, and the kid from Florida State, although being a low-end 3-star, maybe going to Florida State was a big step up. I think maybe makes a better transition, coming to play at Carolina. Regardless, I think you're hoping and looking at maybe these 5 guys, particularly the 3 freshmen, just give you the potential foundation of this position group moving forward, assuming that Belichick and his son stay here for the next 3 to 4 years. So, I think you got to like the fact that you've got really a handful of young guys that you could kind of grow, teach, and develop them in the system. And maybe whether it's in 26 or maybe 27, these are the faces of that linebacker room. And where these are guys that I think we're talking about in a big way. I expect that to be for Hauser. I think this will be a guy that next year, assuming he's still in Chapel Hill, we'll be talking about in a much bigger capacity.